we're doing here today, most of it is in this lovely little recent publication by Gemma Simmonds, a religious sister, Dancing at the Still Point. I'll leave that around, but it's a little book for, it's how to have a 10-minute retreat for people who are very busy. And so that's the root of what I'm doing with you today. I'm inspired by Christ, as we all are. I find my home in the Catholic Church, but it's a home. We're a family today. That's how I'd like to see it. So that's sort of my home. It's an eccentric home, and I realised a long time ago it's full of mad uncles, and dotty aunties, and, you know, I like some aspects of Catholic theology, but it's a mad church, really. It's got everybody in it, all shapes and sizes and persuasions. But I don't come to you as a Catholic today. I come to you as a brother, really. And so these little slides here, these sessions are only going to take 15 minutes, really. And they're meant to be, I hope, relaxing, provocative, maybe a little bit challenging, but only in a good way. And the slides are really for me, because they become my aid memoir. So look, the first thing is, I just thought maybe one person today might turn up feeling a little bit guilty about something. I don't know, your parents, your children, your job, your ministry, all of it. And I'm reminded of G.K. Chesterton, who said once, very provocatively, it's our solemn duty sometimes to do nothing. You go, that's almost unbearable in our present culture. In the second session, we'll take a bit more of a look at busyness. But in this first session, thank you for getting here. Really, for breaking the chain of self-importance. When my dad was dying about 6 years ago, he was a man of few words, and I was lucky with the parents I got. You don't choose your parents, right? I got a good deal. And my dad, I was looking at him, and he was lying in our lounge, in his lounge. And I said, of all the things you taught me, what is the thing that you most want me to remember when you're not here anymore? I was lucky to ask that. Some of you lost people suddenly, didn't you? And he took my hand. It was great, really. This was a bloke who spent his life in the parachute regiment. He was solid and stoic and reliable, but not particularly prone to emotion. And he said, son, don't take yourself too seriously. And then he added, this is gorgeous, he said, you're going to die. It's not a bad line. I get caught up in presenting to the world my favourite homily, which is I'm very busy. And I'm nearly 60, and it's dawned on me that nobody cares. Now look, please don't take this the wrong way, but nobody really cares how busy you are. You know that, don't you? Except the people you love. It's interesting. Our solemn duty to do nothing is almost unbearable, I think. So well done. Well done for having the courage to say, no, enough. I've got a list, it's not going to go away, might even get added to today, but I will do this, and I will do this in the name of my own well-being and in the name of the people I love. So thank you. Which leads me to the thing I most want you to remember today, which is probably the hardest thing in COVID for me, was losing my mum. And it was hard because it was plastic screens. You know, it was in the middle of all that. And one of the things she said to me shortly before she died, and I know what she means now, she said to me, David, thank them, all of them. It was a call, really. So I'm going to thank you. And you're going to go, well, what would you thank me for? You're not a bishop or a boss or you're not even somebody I help. And I go, no, I am. Thank you. It's a human thing. It doesn't come from a position of authority. And it just says, for all the stuff people don't see, that he sees, for the relentlessness of it all, for being worried about things, for wanting to do better, for knowing that there's a need out there that's not yours. I can hear me mum, not in some weird way, behind me going, thank him, Dave. So if it's all possible, it'd be great today to just recognise you're a good person. You work hard, you care about things, and you worry a lot. And thank you, just for being that, really. So, anyway, what just happened? We won't spend the day reflecting on this particularly, but we have just been through probably one of the most remarkable interruptions of your life. It bludgeoned its way into your circumstance. It restricted your freedoms and told you what you could do. It influenced who you could speak to and who you couldn't speak to. And it taught us new things. We learned new symbols. This crazy idea that you could mute. Who'd have thought once upon a time we'd be going, you've left your mute on. You've left your mute on. I can't hear you. It's become suddenly completely aware of a brave new world. My background is education. I started teaching in the 1980s. And I won't tell you my life story, except that I've spent most of my life working with and for teachers all over the world, really. But in a recent survey we conducted in a couple of dioceses up north, when we asked people what they missed over the last 2 years, the highest category, this was 10,000 teachers in Salford and Liverpool, and what they missed most was nonsense, banter, casual trivia, standing at the photocopier making a joke was what they missed. We missed each other. And strangely, in a casual way, we missed each other. We discovered that trivia is actually important to us. When you ask people, why did you like it in that hospital or that court or that school, they'll often tell you a nonsense story. It's not about targets and performance, as important as those things are. It turned out that people, no matter how high up they are in an organisation, will often say, I liked it there. You go, why did you like it there? I go, well, we had a laugh. So something just happened to us, and during the course of the day, I know you will have reflected already on this, and I'm not particularly asking you to go there, but we entered into a brave new world of cutting our own hair. This is my daughter-in-law cutting my son's hair in our back garden. That never happened. It happened because of an interruption. And we had heartbreak. It's my daughter trying to reach my mum through a picture. So, Buckley Beach, people started to do crazy things like pile up stones and pray for each other. All because of an interruption. So here she is, this is my mum with my wife, sitting in a beach hut on Buckley Beach. And I just want to finish this little section with a story. I go into a head teacher's office. It was my job then, working for the Catholic Diocese of Plymouth. and I was looking after head teachers. And as it was often my want, I knock on the school and go in. And I said to this head teacher, how are you? She did an interesting thing. She said, well. Now when a head teacher, I don't know whether it's true chaplaincy, when a head teacher begins an answer with well, followed by a comma, what that means is that's code for shall we shut the door? Alright? So we shut the door, we pour a coffee, and she wells up. And this was just before the pandemic began. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, David, and she held up a bit of paper. And she said, I've got nothing done today. Nothing. And I said, is that possible? And she said, well, look, she said, and the only box ticked. She was one of those people who writes a list, but also puts a little box next to it so she can have the pleasure of ticking it. My wife puts things on the list she's already done, just so she can just that feeling if I did something on it. So she got the little box there. And the only thing that was ticked on it was meet David Wells, 4:30 p.m. And I could see that even in the city, I could see in her neck, actually, there's a passage about the stoning of Stephen in the Acts of the Apostles, and the description of the people who kill him are they're stiff-necked. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Interesting about how stress works, isn't it? She was stiff-necked and anxious, and her words were this. She said, every time I tried to get on with my job, every time, she said, I get a knock on the door or the bloody phone rings. And she said, that's happened to me all day. And she was clawing really at the ceiling. But I was driving home that night, and I was thinking, this is really hard, particularly on people in ministry, right? Where did we get the idea from that the strategy is more important than the interruption? Or put another way, who do we really think is in control when we're talking about faith? For this woman, the interruptions had reached the stage where they were not her doing her job. And the only thing that was doing her job was getting her list done. Now, I know if you're a list writer, this is going to sound pretty offensive. Actually, the list matters. Like, pretty much. Today wouldn't have happened without a list of one kind or another. But that woman was teaching me something, absolutely. So I don't want to live in a world without lists. But what's happened in education, and I don't know whether this happened in the courts and in social work and in voluntary services and working for the RAF and all the different contexts you're in, but what's happened in education is that the list has become the why, and it doesn't sustain you. It's interesting. So, lastly, I go into my mum's house, clearly. She's the second of my parents to die, and so we have that trauma of emptying a home. Some of you have done this. It's weird. I don't know whether you've got this imbibed in you. I blame the Catholic Church for this bit. It's all this business about sacraments. You see, what it does to you over a lifetime, it makes everything sacred. So you're walking around a house, and half of it's junk, but you can't throw it away, because it's sacred. See, it isn't, but it is. You know, she said, well, was she like that? Do you want it? Well, I don't think I do really. Do you want it? No, I don't. Well, we can't chuck it away. And then everything comes, well, we can't make a museum to her. That would just be weird. So you've got this awful thing about what goes to the charity shop, what goes in the skip, what do you love and cherish. Oh, but she taught me something, even afterwards. She taught me this. There were still recipes in that house that she'd never cooked. Right? There was things not done. She was a very organised woman. There were a few bills not paid. A few things she would have finished, like to have got sorted out. Probably given those books over there away. She hadn't. And I began to realise that the terror of the list is that in Christian life we never get to finish what we start. It's just not true. And if that's the case, how do we go to bed unfinished every day? From your description you gave me of the work you do, you clearly hold people to your care. You're never going to finish that. This is, sorry if you can't see, you can have these slides if you want them, but this is one of my favourites. Two people from the mid-century, last century. This is C.S. Lewis. The great thing, if one can, is to stop regarding all the unpleasant things and interruptions of one's own or real life. The truth is, of course, that what one calls the interruptions are precisely one's real life, the life God is sending us. You go, oh, don't bloody do that to me. It might turn out that you're the answer to the prayer of the person knocking on the door. And I know that's got to bully my list. Perhaps more starkly, I love this, is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. What's he going to say to us? We must be ready to allow ourselves to be interrupted by God. God will be constantly crossing our paths and cancelling our plans by sending us people with claims and petitions. We may pass them by, preoccupied with more important tasks. And of course his life was interrupted by the Nazis. He was engaged, he was doing well. His ministry was filled with fruit. And he writes that. Life's turned on its head. Forgive me for this, but just as if to drive the point home, he added later on in the same document. It's a strange fact that Christians and leaders frequently consider their work so important and urgent that they'll allow nothing to disturb them. They think they're doing God a service in this, but actually they're disdaining God's crooked yet straight path. I lost my mum in the pandemic. We loved her dearly. It wasn't smooth or as I'd hoped. But actually, for the large part, I can still see grace in the pandemic. I think it was there, some ways, to interrupt us. And for Gemma Simmonds, of course, she says the problem isn't going back to normal. The problem is what was normal in the first place. So, when I ask you to reflect a little bit on the last few years, maybe more like this. What was the good that just happened? We've probably thought and reflected and suffered a little bit. But don't go there. In what ways was there wisdom in this disruption? A new way of looking at things. One of my favourites, Teilhard de Chardin, who said, "Give our Lord the benefit of believing that his hand is leading you." I love this next bit. "And accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete." I go to bed every night thinking about the thing I didn't do. I need to start writing a different list. Do you know what we did today? It's amazing. I went on a retreat and I gave my time to think, and I deserve that, especially in the name of the people I love. They deserve a better dad, son, brother too. So today, it's about us. And of course. We have it in our scriptures. What needs to be finished will be finished. That is our faith. In the meantime, why don't we just enjoy ourselves? I keep meeting Christians who are carrying the world on their shoulders, and I'm not sure God's asking them to. Oh, my list. Have you seen my list? Please. So, that's me, part 1 of 3. What did you learn from the interruptions of the last 2 years? You don't have to answer these questions, but they're provocations, really. What did you learn from the interruptions of the last 2 years? Could you dare to go with my dad? The risk of taking ourselves too seriously. What has the pandemic taught you about your response to events beyond your control? This is the interesting thing. Reb Tevier, Fiddler on the Roof. How cool. Every time he goes back into the field, each of his daughters is going to bring a son, a husband into the family that he wouldn't choose. And he wanders into the field every time and he goes to the Lord, another blessing. What is this about? I'll tell you. So I propose that you enjoy now a little bit of still time, that you reflect a little bit on your own goodness, and that you give time to saying what just happened really, and am I growing wiser through it? Interruptions might be more divine than we